You're trying to give the young people something that will help them, yet you don't know exactly what it ought to be.
Welcome to the Teach Thought Podcast. Our mission is to rethink what's possible teaching and learning in a modern context. Join your classroom to the Teach Thought movement and be a part of the change.
Thanks for tuning into the Teach Thought Podcast once again. My name is Drew Perkins, the Director of Professional Development here, and if you are looking to innovate your teaching and learning at your school, please check out our professional development website by going to teachthought.com/PD. Check out our various services and ways we can personalize professional development for you in ways that are affordable for sustainability. In today's podcast, I spoke with Dr. Richard DuFour about his new book, In Praise of American Educators and How They Can Become Even Better. Please note that this is part 2 of a 2-part podcast because of the length. And in this part, the second half, we spoke about how to align professional development, how to define success and the importance of doing so, the science and the art of professional learning communities, and what he calls the danger of educational lottery, as well as some resources and ways to further your work around PLCs. We now join the podcast in progress with Dr. DuFour. Enjoy.
One of the points that we really try to emphasize is that unless you're using actual evidence of student learning to inform and improve your practice, you are not yet a professional learning community.
One of the things that I see as a real overlap, when I think about, again, getting back to PBL and project-based learning and one of that sort of culture, and I see lots of overlap. It resonated with me to see your mission, vision, values, and goals. And, I am always sort of harping on the idea of really being clear about, with students, and the teachers are very clear about product, purpose, and audience. So what is it that students are making, why are they doing it, and for whom? Hopefully, working towards authenticity. But the big piece there, and you've said it a number of times today, and you sort of repeat it through the book, is that purpose, and really being clear about our purpose. And, I think that PLCs, it's sort of an iterative process, and again, getting at that ecosystem of really being clear about what it is that we really want to, that we see ourselves as that purpose, and, sort of getting at that purpose of school thing here. And then, as you say, the vision, what must our school become to accomplish that purpose, and the values. And I might say, sometimes I say it's action, and in a PBL setting, like these are our need to knows, and this is what we need to do. And really, all of those things and your critique, your goals and how you're going to mark your progress sort of comes back through that lens of that purpose and vision. And so kind of, if you would sort of talk about that process as you see schools setting that process up.
Well, it was based on the experience we had in our own school, where we put together a faculty task force, and I was a brand new principal, new to that school, and I said, I want to help you create a school that you can be proud of, a school that you're going to be happy to be working in, but I need to know what you want. I need to know what your vision of that school is. And so we asked that task force to establish that foundation, and then met with the entire faculty in small groups to get their feedback, get their input, do additional drafts until we got it to the point that we were happy with it. And ultimately, our Board of Education adopted it as board policy number 1, that everything we did in that school was going to flow from that foundation of mission, vision, values, and goals. Mm-hmm. So in our case, we specifically said our purpose was to ensure the success of every student. That was our mission. It didn't need to be eloquent, grandiose. It didn't need to be, 5 pages long.
It probably shouldn't be.
Right. It was 5 words long. So we said then that given that fact, if we can agree to that, and here are the reasons why we have to be interested in the success of every student. I mean, it wasn't just let's share philosophies here. It was what's the evidence of the dire consequences if kids are not successful in K-12. And we presented that evidence, and they studied it and said, yeah, if it were my child, I'd want the school to be committed to ensuring that he or she was successful. So then, that led to, well, what kind of school does do that? And what do we mean by successful? A lot of people use mission and vision interchangeably, but they're really two different things. Mission is clarity of purpose. Why was the school built? Why do we come to school every day? What are we hoping to accomplish? Vision is aspirational. Vision is someday we want to be a school that would be characterized by these things. And so it's more specific and more in-depth than a simple mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
The values piece was, I think, the piece that turned out to be the most beneficial to us, because in the values piece, we asked people to say, what are we prepared to start doing today in order to contribute to the school we want to become so we can better fulfill our purpose? And our challenge there was, again, to have an internal focus. Don't tell me, here's what the parents need to do, here's what the administration needs to do, here's what the state needs to do. The administration had to say, here is what we are prepared to do in order to help this school achieve its vision. And we're going to start doing this today. The faculty had to do the same thing. So, for example, if we said in our vision statement that we want to be a school that's characterized by a collaborative culture, where the collaborative team is the fundamental structure of the school, and we take collective responsibility for student learning, and we won't work in isolation, then what kind of commitment did we need from our teachers? And they put it very simply. I promise I'm going to be a positive contributing member of my collaborative team. And then goals were, how will we know if this is working? How will we know if a year from now, 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, we'll be better off? And I think teams then did much the same thing down at the team level when they said, what's our purpose for teaching this unit?
Right.
And what's the best way? What will it look like if we teach it well? And what commitments are we prepared to make? And I think the one mistake that teachers often make is they'll say, okay, let's have a project-based learning. This is why we're going to do it. We understand it's important, and we can explain this to the kids. But then they don't clearly define, either among themselves or for the kids, what success looks like. And I think that was one of the things that our school benefited from the most, was we had established those indicators of success, those benchmarks that we were going to hold ourselves to see if we were making progress. And I think teachers did that in the classroom as well. If they had performance-based assessments, they agreed on the criteria they would use in judging the quality of the performance, and they practiced applying to make sure they could apply the criteria consistently. And then they were very explicit in teaching those performance criteria to the kids. And I think that's a step that too often gets left out.
As we think about, and looking again through the book here, some of the highlights, you're talking about what real PLCs do, brings student learning and instructional practice into the open. And so really thinking about PLCs and what they look like, or what we really want our schools to look like, and sort of a vision. And as a side note, another thing here, I really love in one of the I think it's the last chapter here, principals don't need to have all the answers about improving their schools, but they must ask the right questions and create a variety of structures and processes to engage the staff in the consideration of those questions. And I love that inquiry part. I think that asking the right questions, and as a teacher, it's not your job to have all the answers. It's really much closer to asking the right questions and helping them to ask those right questions. But thinking about PLCs, and in some senses, you're a real technician about this. I mean, there's the precise nature in which you sort of dissect these pieces. It's impressive. It's really super, super helpful. But one of the things that I'd like to get you to talk about is sort of your vision. Like, so as you think about vision, I mean, I'm assuming that you see this as an organic process, that you really, the technical side of it, I call the science of teaching and the art of teaching, really blending that part. The book really, I think, gets into the science of PLCs. What's that art of PLCs and school leadership and that culture? And what do you see, like in 10 years or 20 years, what do you hope that would look like in our schools?
Well, I guess I would contrast it with my own experience as a teacher. I taught right next door to the same teacher for 5 years, and we taught the exact same subject. Never once did I know what he was teaching, how he was assessing, whether or not his kids were learning at higher or lower levels than mine. We were almost independent subcontractors who were given a room and then told to wing it. And what I am hoping is that that will become the way of the dinosaur in schools, and that every teacher would be a member of a collaborative team where they're working together interdependently. They're not just groups, they're teams. So they're working interdependently to achieve common goals for which members are mutually accountable. That has to become the fundamental structure of the school. Teaching in isolation is educational malpractice, in my view, and any school that allows it is supporting educational malpractice. We have to eliminate that. But once you're on a team, then the question becomes, and you're given time to collaborate, and your team makes sense. It's not just random people. Mm-hmm. But once you're on that team, there has to be absolute clarity regarding the work, and that is, every teacher, every day, when they walk into the classroom, knows exactly the knowledge and skills and concepts and dispositions they want their kids to acquire. And they know this because they've been deeply engaged in the study of their curriculum and pulled out those things that are most essential for kids' future success. And in addition to having that clarity of this is what they must learn, they would have common pacing so that we could use common assessments in a formative way. They would use those assessments. They would created by the team itself, because as I try to make the point in the book, it's not the product that matters so much as the process. Mm-hmm. The team could say, well, let's just use the questions at the end of the textbook, or let's buy some questions, or let's let the district do the assessments. It's not the assessment that matters. It's the conversation that teachers have as a team about what would be the best way to gather evidence of student learning. What is the most valuable evidence of student learning? That conversation provides clarity and insight that most teachers don't get. But again, once they get the results from those common assessments, they have to use them in a very specific way. There has to be a protocol. It's not just teach and test and hope for the best, or teach and test and give a grade and move on. It's what does the evidence of student learning tell us about which of our students are struggling, which of our students needs extension and enrichment because they're already highly proficient. How are we going to provide those things? And how do I get better as a teacher, and how does our team get better? And finally, if you're going to be a PLC, in every single school, there should be a systematic process that says, we could say to every parent, your kid cannot fall through the cracks. If your student struggles on even a single common assessment, we guarantee we're going to give your student extra time and extra support in a way that's timely, directive, systematic, and never removes them from new direct instruction. And we're going to continue with that support until the student is proficient. Those are the things that you have to do if you're going to be a PLC. And those are the things I'd like to see actually become the norm. And ultimately, the greatest hope is that our profession would recognize the benefit of doing this and would do it out of commitment rather than compliance. Mm-hmm. Initially, it may need, for some people, it may need to be done out of compliance. And better it's done out of compliance than not done at all. But the goal is that we want it done out of commitment. And I have seen high-performing PLCs routinely say they would absolutely never go back to doing things the way they used to do them, where people worked in isolation. They recognize that system is inherently unfair to kids. How fair is it that what a student learns depends on the teacher he gets, or how he's graded depends on the teacher he gets, or how difficult the assessments will depend on the teacher, or whether or not homework is counted for a lot or little or not at all, whether or not students can turn in their work late and get credit or not get credit. Those are all things that in traditional schools are left to the discretion of individual teachers. And so basically, we're playing educational lottery with the lives of kids. The school they go to doesn't matter nearly as much as the teacher to whom they're assigned, and parents recognize that. And I would point out that as teachers and principals, we would never submit ourselves to that kind of system where a principal in one school would allow you to turn in your grades late without comment. Another one would give you a letter of reprimand, and a third one would say, well, I'm going to dock you a day's pay because you didn't fulfill your teacher responsibilities, and so you're getting docked a day's pay. If that were to happen in any district, teachers would rise up and decry the unfairness and inequity of a system like that. And yet it's going on with kids. And my question is, where's the outrage? Why doesn't that happen in our profession when we know this is happening to kids every day? If we could eliminate that educational lottery, and in every school, kids learn because of what the school stands for, and teachers are delivering their professional ability based on their commitment to the process, then I'd be happy. In terms of the art part of the question, the one thing that you will never see in any writing that we've ever done about PLCs is to say there's one right way to teach and everybody has to teach it. In fact, in a PLC, the greater the variation in instruction, the better, because we want people to use what they feel are their very best strategies, and then we want to look at the results and not say abandon that strategy, but here's another strategy that you might be able to add to it that would make you even more effective. So the art of teaching, the art of how will I relate to my kids, how will I present this material, is still left up to the individual teacher to decide. The other issues are collective decisions made by a team.
You're really kind of getting at, some of those issues of equity with how we're applying and what we're expecting of teachers. And whenever I work with teachers and do some peer critique and protocols, and I for years was sort of turned off by protocols because I don't think that they were done particularly well. But boy, when they're done well, and I'm a big believer now. It's just an absolute. It's like teachers when they get a chance to professionally talk about their work in a way that's meaningful. Their eyes light up because the passion and the professionalism then does get to surface. And like you said, they said, why do we not do this more often? How can we do this more often? And, I think that's one of the things that I really try to stress with schools that I do work with, how in the world do we get that culture so that you're leveraging sort of the technical, the science of it and the protocols, but it's really something that they're committed to and they're just excited. I mean, where it's happening in structured ways, but it's also happening in unstructured, organic ways because that's just the norm in which we operate, and that's such an important piece. So, I love the tone of the book is really, really wonderful in praise of American educators and how they can become even better. There's some sort of biting remarks in there. There's some funny things like it is tragically comical to think that it is easier to amend our nation's most sacred document than to revise the bell schedule of the local high school in some districts. And, it just makes you chuckle, but it's true. It's like, how in the world can we really move this ball forward? And so I want to wrap us up here because it's been a great conversation. But as we think about resources and things, and of course this book is a resource, and I know you have websites. I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk about those things and how to, where people should look to find more about your ideas. But also, what are some resources and folks and videos or books or things that you say, boy, people should really check this out, or this was really a powerful piece, made me think profoundly?
Well, I would say that one of the best resources available is a website called allthingsplc.info. And that is a free website. It is non-commercial. You cannot buy anything on it. But on that website, people can ask questions. They can look at schools that are national models of the PLC process. They can look by elementary, middle, or high school. They can look by size of school. There are a ton of free resources and tools. If they were looking for examples of, well, what's a good protocol for analyzing evidence of student learning, there are things like that there. If they're looking for, well, what should be the most important things we focus on during a team meeting, that's there. It's called 18 Critical Issues. And then there's a tremendous research base. I think it's about 30 pages long now, of researchers who have endorsed the PLC process, both inside and outside of education, or elements of the process. Like, is it better to collaborate or work in isolation? Is it better to have a guaranteed curriculum or let people decide for themselves what they want to teach? So if you were looking for a rationale or to help build a rationale, you could certainly go there. If you wanted to see schools that are doing it, every principal has said, I'd be happy to talk to anyone who wants to call and ask about our school. If you're looking for resources and tools, I think that would be absolutely the best place you can go. And you can, as I said, raise your questions and get those questions asked and answered.
Okay.
The other, if I were to cite one other resource, it would be the book Learning by Doing, which is a handbook for schools that are working at the PLC process. The third edition of it is coming out in May, and so I'd hold off to May until you buy it. But it presents the case studies that present problems that schools are likely to run into. And then from that point on, it says, here's how you should address the problem. Here's why you should address it this way. Here's tools for addressing it. Here's tips for addressing it. Here's critical questions to ask for addressing it. And so the whole book is laid out so that a leadership team of key teacher leaders and a principal could go through these case by case and be armed with the tools that they would need to help their teachers. So I think Learning by Doing, third edition, is going to be a really great tool for schools that engage in this work.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, and of course, solution-tree.com, solution-tree.com is where you can find a lot of the resources as well. Any social media or websites personally?
No, but my email is on most of the things that are on All Things PLC, so if people want to email me, they should feel free.
Okay, great. It's been a real pleasure talking with you, and the book is really very, very good and interesting, and hopefully the impact is felt. I really appreciate the time.
Well, thank you, and thanks for your interest in my work.
That'll do it for today. Thanks for listening. If you didn't hate it, please give us a quick review on iTunes. We record weekly and sometimes multiple episodes per week. Questions? Email us at podcast@teachthought.com or find us on the Teach Thought Twitter account @TeachThought.